Yeah, oh, I'm very happy to be here with all of you, especially thank you, John, for being here. This meeting, this masterclass, especially this gathering with many, many people. We are here around 2,000 people. It's really an exceptional and amazing moment. So thank you so much, John. So John is the founder of the Mbsr program, and we are here together to explore the deepness of the heart of mindfulness and Mbsr. So I'm Franco Cucchio, the director of Motus Mundi, the Italian School of Mindfulness, member of the GMC, the Global Mindfulness Centers, recognized by Brown University. And we are dedicated to develop the Mbsr training following the guidelines of Brown and Jon Kabat-Zinn, following the international guidelines to guarantee the development of a mindfulness teacher and the development of the teaching of the mindfulness and Mbsr in a deeper way as much as possible. So our school is also dedicated to train people in the MBCT program and Mindful Eating MB-EAT program. So I'm very happy to be here with John. We know by many years, and we waited this moment for many years. So thank you so much, John, for being here. Thank you so much, John, for your friendship and your kindness. So please, John, I want to pass you the mic. So please invite us to go deeper in this reflection and practice. Thank you to everybody.
I'd like to welcome everybody. I'm doing this on behalf of Franco Cucchio and his wonderful center, Motus Mundi. And I notice, and I would invite you to put your screen on gallery view if you haven't already. And we're all muted, but all of you are muted. But why not just go through the 500 people who are here and just notice that your impulse to join us this evening or wherever you are around the world, and I'm seeing people from all over the world who are good friends, but wherever you are, your impulse to be together is mirrored in everybody else's impulse to be here together. And I want to express it right off the bat, my enormous gratitude to the translators, to Isabella in particular for the Italian translation and to Geneviève for the French simultaneous translation. It's a huge privilege to have you both doing this for us. And we will invite you at some point to come on the screen, maybe right now, if you can, so we can see you and then I'll feature you.
We can do in this way and this, and let me see, Geneviève.
And let's just feature you both. Because of course, without you, we wouldn't be able to really have this gathering.
And let me see what is Isabella. Oh, no, it's a little bit complicated because everything is switching.
Okay, well, you know, maybe you can feature yourself, Isabella, as you're translating. Just, and you too, Geneviève, so that you're kind of in the full screen. Because this is an art form in itself, simultaneous translation. It's even more of an art form because it's Dharma. So the simultaneous translation of Dharma, which is the language of the heart, from one language to another, is really an extraordinary accomplishment. And I, for one, and I'm sure that Franco feels the same, it's an enormous debt of gratitude to you. Maybe I can do it for you. Spotlight for everyone. There's Geneviève. And where is Isabella?
Isabella, I can see probably the screen's moved and they're very small speaks. Not easy to find, Isabella.
Okay, well, she can show herself if she wants to. But let's just again notice there must be a limit of 500 because it's not going any higher than 500. It was meant to be 1,000. But let's just scan through the faces. Everybody else will be on the live stream, as I understand it. And just noticing that we're not alone. And everybody has something better to do with their time and this evening. And here we are, have all come together. And now that we have all come together, I'm going to invite whoever's in control to shut off the chat so we don't wind up splitting our attention while we're here together. We can put it on again at the end. There's Isabella. I'm going to...
Thank you.
Let me see. Whoops. I lost you already. Oh, there you are. Okay. Okay, Isabella, be prepared for this. There you are. I'm sorry. I just had to do that.
Okay, now, I can see Isabella now, but it's not working. So
and again, deep gratitude for all of you being here, and I'd just like to say how honored I am to be with you, whether I've known you for years or decades, or whether we're brand new to being in each other's presence. That this topic and this work is so profound that I see it as actually a kind of love affair with life itself and with the potential for us all, in some sense, living the lives that are ours to live while we have them to live, which is not, as you know, forever. The law of impermanence is functioning at all times. And we're living in a very, very complex environment. My country is going through an enormity of terrifying challenges at the moment. And so the subject being mindfulness has never been of more importance to actually not think about, but to cultivate and embody, not just for oneself, but for the sake of each other, for the sake of all humanity, for the sake of all life, and for the sake of this planet than ever before. So I'm really honored to be here with all of you. And we're going to dive as deeply as we can into a particular kind of investigation here, or illumination of what mindfulness really is and how it can be skillfully and with integrity and with an ethical foundation continuously brought into the mainstream of the world in ways that optimize our potential for healing and for well-being and for kindness and compassion in the world, and minimize our built-in aggression and violence and self-centeredness, to the point that even if we don't mean to, individuals, when they are not aware of who they actually are or at home in who they actually are, can cause unimaginable levels of harm and violence in the world that we no longer can tolerate on this very small planet that we have, if we could ever tolerate it before. So this is a moment to really wake up on every level. And if I'd found something more powerful than mindfulness in my own life to guide me, I would be doing that. I wouldn't be practicing mindfulness, but I've never found anything remotely as powerful as mindfulness and heartfulness and the Dharma out of which it comes. So that will be the topic for this evening. And I will now turn it over to Franco and follow his lead, or at least I hope that's my intention, is to follow your lead, Franco, for the rest of this, and in service of Motus Mundi and the great work that you're doing in Italy.
Thank you so much, Jon. just want to start with a short information for people who are looking for the translation. On the bar of the commands at the back of the screen, this is a symbol, a round symbol. If you click there, you can find the different language. So you can choose the language. I just want to say l'Italian for Italian speakers. Se state ascoltando, cercate la traduzione. Sulla barra dei comandi c'è un circolo come un mondo, cliccate lì e selezionate l'italiano. And then the last information for everybody that at the end we will keep a space of time for some question. And the question we ask you that has to be all in English. And if these are in Italian, I will have to translate it in English. So I pray that has to be very short and not translator. So thank you, Jon. So it's enormous gratitude to you for being here, sitting with us, and your presence is so precious for us. I think I can speak for everybody, but also for me, it's a lot of gratitude. It's so very, very precious. And I want to thank also the old friends that are here, the new friends. Probably there's a technical problem that has to be set up for 1,000 people. We are in 500, but we have also the streaming. So people who are not here are following us in the YouTube streaming. And I want also to thanks to people who shared this event, so it make it possible in so larger way. So I'm excited and moved at the same time. And I have been dreaming this moment for a long time. And now we are here. So thank you, Jon, again for this moment. We started to talk many years ago, but now we are here. So few things that at the beginning, this gathering was intended mainly for the Italian community of Mbsr teacher. But then the effect of the word Jon got contagious. And it started to grow and to spread all over. So for this meeting, we are around 2,000 people. 2,000 people asked to be here for sitting and staying together. Just one thing is that in Italy also we say in our, I think it was in many countries, we're used to say, oh, yesterday I went out with some friends. Oh, but tonight or tomorrow we could say, yesterday I met my friends. We were about 2,000 people. It's very touching. It's very touching. So thank you, Jon, again. This comes from you, who you are, what are you doing, and I have a lot of love and gratitude for you, and it simply is enormous. So for introduction, the first reflection is that we are here, and all of us here have many things in common. We have a human life, challenges, worries, difficulties, and suffering. Moreover, in these past 2 years, we have all been going through some mutual hardship globally that has touched us in many ways and changing everyone's lives. We also have a human attitudes in common, like deeper listening, the kindness, the warmth, the gratitude, and more and more. And we have our specific inner human condition in common, the awareness that is the center in our life, or at least for me, I think also for all of you that are here. So the webinar is dedicated to the title that Jon wanted, and I shared with Jon, is the heart of mindfulness and the Mbsr, the practice of living life as if it really mattered in the only moment you ever have. Practitioner or not, mindfulness and awareness is so important for all of us. For me, it's a fundamental resource for human being for living, facing and finding the meaning in any experience we have, pleasant, unpleasant, terrible sometimes, dramatic sometimes, traumatic also, as well the light moments which we frequently lose or due to the lack of awareness. So I wanted to come to you, Jon. So if you can tell us something about which is the intention of Mbsr from you. How did you feel it arise, especially yourself, and especially how did it come to you? And how did Mbsr arise in you like an inspiration of larger mindfulness?
Well, I very much appreciate us starting off in this way, Franco, because it's very important for me to express both my gratitude for people caring about what I say, but what I say and what I teach and what I practice is not at all about me personally. And so it's very important not to have one's sense of gratitude or meaning become too inflationary, too inflated, because it doesn't really have to do with me. So while I'll answer the question about how my life trajectory to lead to Mbsr, to me, the essential point of mindfulness is just what was said in the title, that it's about each one of us taking a certain kind of responsibility and also a deep inquiry into the nature of our own being and its commonality with all life, but also its unique beauty, the uniqueness of our particular conditions, our particular history, our particular forms of suffering, of trauma, as you mentioned, and to realize that there's no ideal one way to be in relationship to this, that you can get from the best teacher on the planet, whoever that is in your mind. The best teacher on the planet in terms of mindfulness is yourself. And everything that happens, I'm going to suggest, is part of the perfect curriculum while you're still breathing for finding your way to recognize your intrinsic beauty and wholeness, and to then embody that moment by moment by moment in the only moment we ever have, this one, and then gift that to the world in whatever ways make the most sense to you. Of course, as a parent, that would be a pretty good prescription for gifting something of value to your children or your grandchildren, because they have to live their lives. But what you can really give them is not a prescription for how to live their lives or an instructional set, but an example of how you live your life, and then leave them enough room to find their own way. This is extremely important when it comes to teaching Mbsr, which I'll talk about later, because it's not a formula or a fixed, what's the word that you like to use, Franco, a fixed, I'm blanking on the word.
I don't know.
Yeah, you know, but it means formula, you know, a protocol. That's the word. It's not a fixed protocol, okay? And so people who want to teach them mindfulness and think, oh, all I need to do is get the book and then teach the book and figure out what to say. That's not mindfulness. That's a kind of way of destroying the heart of mindfulness. Because although it's true that you can get a lot out of books and texts and sacred texts and everything else, without you being the essential ingredient, if you're missing, and if your entire life in some sense isn't oriented towards what we are cultivating in ourselves, then you can't really teach mindfulness in any shape or form, because you're not living it. And there's no escape from this. It's not like anything else that I know of, like, because it's an activity that's about non-action. It's about being rather than doing. And then it's about our doing coming out of our being. But and no one can do the being for you. And there's no formula or script or protocol for that. And so this is a lifetime's engagement. So when I tell the story of how I came to it, that shouldn't be that important to you. My interest is in how you came to it, why you even showed up today. What's the real reason? Who showed up right here and right now? Why? What is so alive in you that you would be so crazy as to take, 3 hours of your precious time and be in front of a screen that you're probably in front of way too many hours a day anyway? And that's part of the love affair. So mindfulness is really not about becoming the Buddha or Mother Teresa or anybody else who might be St. Francis, anybody who might be your ideal saintly person or wise person, or the Dalai Lama, but to be you. The Dalai Lama, Mother Teresa, they don't need you to be them. They have enough trouble. They need you to be you. And that's what this is really about. So in my own case, the particulars are that I somehow had the karma to be born into a family where my father was a very well-known and highly respected and really a samurai scientist in what would now be called the field of molecular immunology at Columbia University Medical School. And his lab was like 2 buildings away from my house. I grew up right in the middle of the medical center practically. And so I was born into a world where people were asking deep questions about the nature of life, right down to the basic molecular biology and the chemistry and the physics of it. And knew a lot of people in the field who were highly accomplished scientists. And so, that was one element of exposure for me. And I was watching them in a lot of different ways. And then I trained with a very famous Italian molecular biologist when I went to graduate school at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, Salvador Luria, who is from Trieste. And I went back and did a little pilgrimage to Trieste in 2008, I believe, to really pay homage to his lineage. And he won the Nobel Prize while I was in his laboratory for doing really wonderful things. But I didn't want to be Salvador Luria. I was watching Salvador Luria, and there was no way I wanted to be Salvador Luria. I wanted to be me, but I didn't know who that was. So yes, really helpful to accumulate scientific knowledge and maybe even know-how and wisdom. But that wasn't the complete picture, because I went to MIT to study molecular biology to understand something that had been of interest to me since I was a little boy, and that is consciousness. What makes us aware? How is it that we can be aware? And it seemed like studying physics and chemistry and biology were important to get there, but it was pretty obvious that it would take more than that to get there. My mother, on the other hand, who I haven't mentioned yet, so when my father was doing his molecular immunology and, being a laboratory scientist, my mother was an unknown, very prolific painter. And she just loved to paint, and she saw with the eyes of a painter. So she taught me to notice light falling on leaves, for instance, or on panes of glass in the city, and reflections and distortions in car windshields and so forth. She kind of, I like to say, had a kind of way of seeing that was a little bit like Monet. Claude Monet, that she saw the world in a way that was brilliant with reflection and subtlety and shadow and color and form and all sorts of elements like that. And so that was another influence. And then I think as a boy, I was looking for, okay, science is one way of knowing. Art, painting, music, poetry, another way of knowing. So these are different, what officially are called epistemologies, ways of knowing, particular sort of constructions of the human mind that help us to understand the nature of reality. And none of them have a monopoly on that understanding. And one of the things I saw with the scientists was just because they were famous or Nobel laureates didn't mean that they weren't crazy or ignorant or didn't suffer in their lives. It was obvious that they were as lost in some ways in other domains of the world outside the laboratory as anybody else. That was like a real teaching for me. They didn't mean to teach me that, but that's what I mean about watching carefully how other people hold space. Because you can't be like your mentors, no matter who they are and how wonderful they are. You can only be like yourself. So when I heard my first talk about meditation in 1965 at MIT by Philip Kapleau, who had just a Zen master, American Zen master, who had just written a book called The Three Pillars of Zen. It hadn't been published yet, but he came to MIT. And there's a whole story about it in Coming to Our Senses, because I described this in that book. I went to that talk. There were only 3 or 4 other people at the talk. Out of all of MIT, there was Kapleau, Houston Smith, the professor who had invited him, and then 3 or 4 other people. Somehow my karma wound me up in that room, and I heard that talk. And the thought I had was, I've been looking for this my whole life. Something to unify art and science, music, poetry, everything, a way of knowing that embraced all other ways of knowing. And it just clicked for me at the age of 21. And I started meditating that day, and I've never stopped. Now, most people, when they start something, whatever it is, 6 months later, even if they said it was the greatest thing in the world, 6 months later, they're not doing it anymore. They found some other greatest thing in the world. But I've never found another greatest thing in the world. This is somehow, for me at least, was a kind of real awakening in the sense that I saw that awareness could hold all the different multiplicity of ways of knowing, and that inhabiting that universe could help guide the unfolding of my life in ways that, as I said earlier, would cause the least harm and do perhaps the most good, not just for my self-centered self, but in spite of my self-centered self. So not so much to succeed or to become recognized or to, even, succeed on a kind of economic level, but out of a certain kind of desire to understand the world and live a meaningful life within that understanding. So that's what Mbsr came to me as a way of furthering this vector of engagement through the lens of mindfulness, or the embodiment of mindfulness, which is really a pure awareness. And so there's the kind of, instrumental level at which, like anything else, if you're meditating, you get better the more you practice in a certain kind of instrumental way. But if you don't understand that there's a non-instrumental dimension that's equally important to awareness, and that is, there's no place to go, there's nothing to do, and there's nothing to attain, as it says in the Prajnaparamita Heart Sutra of the Chan tradition in ancient China. If you don't understand the non-instrumental side, then you'll be trying your whole life to get to be who you already are. And that would be a tragedy, because you will have missed the beauty that is you, thinking you had to do something to be effective in this world, whereas it's your being that is potentially most effective. And all you're doing when it comes out of being, or being awake, or being mindful, is an entirely different kind of doing, much more ethical, much more in tune with other people's needs, much more in tune with suffering and the nature of suffering and the potential for the liberation from suffering in all its forms. And that's what Mbsr means to me. It's one of an infinite number of vehicles, skillful, hopefully skillful vehicles, for inviting the M that's already in all of us to come out. There's mindfulness, you could think of it as pure awareness, you're already born with it. You have it. It's not something you get. If you're teaching Mbsr, all of the people who come into your class, no matter what kinds of diseases or disorders or, the diagnoses they have, they all are already whole. And they already have full awareness. What they don't have is access to that awareness, because they're so caught up in thinking and reactivity, just like the rest of us, emotional reactivity and the story of me and what a failure I am and what this, that, and the other thing. And they don't realize that literally and metaphorically, right under their noses, is a new way of being in wise relationship to the good, the bad, and the ugly, the pleasant, the unpleasant, and the neutral, in ways that are actually liberative of the automatic pilot mode that can have us zoning through decades of our life, half alive, but half on autopilot, and missing all of our moments, including the beauty of everything from sunsets to moonrises to the look on your granddaughter's face or daughter's face or son's face, or somebody in your classroom who looks confused, but you're too confused yourself to notice their confusion, or it's too threatening. So you can see that this is actually the whole subject of mindfulness really has to do with how much are you willing to live the life that's yours to live. And what the planet needs at this moment is for you to be you, not for you to be Jon Kabat-Zinn or anybody else, or to pretend to be an Mbsr teacher, an MBCT teacher, or anything. You have to ask deep, deep questions about what would it mean to be an Mbsr teacher when I walk into the classroom, no matter what it says in the book. And it's not to disregard the books. I don't write books because they're useless, but the book is only half the story. That's the instrumental piece. But the other half of the story is you, and you, whoever you are or think you are, you're so much bigger than who you think you are, than the narrative or the story of me and how great I am. That's a problem. How horrible I am, how stupid I am, how old I am. Those are all problems. None of it's anywhere near remotely true enough. Even if they're tiny little pieces of, truth in that narrative, the narrative itself is way, way too small and inaccurate. And when you practice in that way, not to get someplace else, but to just open to things as they are, you'll discover that it doesn't feel always like this is like nirvana. It can feel like a hell realm because of what's going on in your mind or in your body or in your life. And the power of this practice, the power of a mindfulness, is that the mindfulness is big enough to hold it all. What I called after Kazantzakis and Zorba the Greek, the full catastrophe of the human condition. So the practice and the work is messy. It's not about perfection. It's about being good enough for now. And that becomes a Zen koan. What is good enough for now? And usually it's, am I awake? And can I be with things as they are in this moment? And then act in a way that causes the least harm and the most benefit? That's a long answer to your question, but I'll stop there.
It's a great answer, John. So how great is also our life, how great is also the Mbsr in some way. It's about the greater part of ourselves. And every time that I'm teaching or something, every piece, in every moment, in each person, myself, I see this beauty of life and the beauty that Mbsr can deliver to us. And just a story that comes to my mind that was this September, last September, and I was waiting, was taking some moments before starting the orientation of the new courses, and this orientation was online. And just about thinking to introduce, I'm here about the orientation of the Mbsr, mindfulness-based stress reduction program. And something comes to my mind. It's like if the screen, the computer was alone, it becomes like a kind of a mirror. And that the Mbsr is not only, say, the acronym for mindfulness-based stress reduction program. It's not only the title of the 8-week program. So it's Mbsr. For the first time, I felt in my body and my feeling that it's an unbelievable statement. So if we leave aside like CFM, university, anything, Mbsr, this acronym, it's really a human, huge statement, because say the stress reduction, the dukkha reduction, the life difficulties reduction is based on ourselves, as you said before, mindfulness in ourselves. It starts from you, starts from us. And it is oriented to our inner nature, the mindfulness or awareness. So I was very touched. For the first time, really, I felt Mbsr is a statement for human beings, for humanity. It's not a acronym. It's really, really more. We can discover in the Mbsr, we can discover in the mindfulness, we discover in the practice, we can discover in daily life. But in that moment, I felt this, wow, what it is, this acronym? It's really, really statement. So thank you, John. And you say more important things. There is another topic that I want to talk with you and to listen your reflection about that. That this topic is mainly oriented for the Italian concerns, Italian teachers, but not only. It is about what you said before, that the calling the Mbsr program to translate in the Mbsr protocol. And currently the word protocol is mainly used in Italy instead of a program. And I have also recently started to hear out that even English, some people are using this term protocol. And also protocol to develop skills. So when I came back, I came with this language in Italian, maybe it's a protocol, but when I was in the USA, when I did my apprentice at CFM, and I was emerged inside the English language, it's mindfulness program, mindfulness program, it was like washing my mind in some way. And I noticed there is a kind of a contradiction within the word protocol and program, as you call it Mbsr program. So if I think just in the medicines, protocol in medicine is totally oriented in the future and on curing the illness. However, the intention of a Mbsr is wider, and it's about, we can say, like the healing with the capital H. And it is focused on the healing the person through reconnect the person and ourselves to our innate nature of integrity, wholeness, and our deep nature of human feeling, human sentiments, and not like an object to be fixed. So just for me, it can be a rigid protocol, but it's an amazing experience. It's an amazing pathway, detailed as well, with some space for learning and training from within. This is for the participant as well for the teachers, the practitioner like as a teacher. And for me, it's important to remember to myself that Mbsr is not for about curing or fixing, but it's about to reconnect it with this, with our wisdom and love and compassion, and that is so universal human condition of pain. In that way, the universal human condition of pain and challenging can be transformed in our pathway. Can you see more, Jon, about these topics and the possible mistake that is when we use protocol, we refer to protocol, or when we refer to the program of learning from our lives?
Well, the interesting thing about bringing meditation, the universe, let's say, of meditation at its deepest and best into the mainstream of medicine is that they both share the same root meaning in the Latin-based languages. Medicine, meditation come from the same deep Indo-European root. And so they are, in some sense, blended at the hip. And I won't go into how that is. It's in my books. But the most important thing is that Mbsr was really meant to be a demonstration project that you could take people falling through the cracks of the healthcare system or the hospital system. And this was in 42 years ago when there were cracks in the American healthcare system. Now there are Grand Canyons in the American healthcare system. And, lots of people are falling through. And I'm not just talking about COVID, of course, and the enormity of that catastrophe, but just the way we are choosing to live our lives. There's so much stress and pain and illness. And it's all about fixing, as you were pointing out. And Mbsr is not, here's a better way to fix your pain, or a better way to fix your cancer, or a better way to fix your heart disease, or your gastrointestinal problems, or your anxiety, or your trauma. It's not about fixing, and it's not about curing. And even in medicine, there are very, very few cures in medicine. And are we not fortunate that the science has reached the point where we can take the molecular biology that I was studying, 40 years ago, and now make mRNA viruses that can actually liberate us from the threat of dying from COVID-19. I mean, it's like just incredible that could be actually done in a year. But because of our ignorance, it wasn't done fast enough, and millions of people died unnecessarily, which is a real tragedy. So mindfulness was in the form of Mbsr was never meant to be cognitive behavioral intervention, not one more way, one more clinic in the hospital that would fix people and put them back together or help them be functional in the face of all this stress, pain, and illness. It was meant to be transformational. It was meant to be an entree where the words medicine and meditation come together in Dharma wisdom. Deep Dharma wisdom that's thousands of years old, that was most highly articulated in the Buddhist tradition, in all sorts of written teachings, but also an oral tradition passed down for hundreds of years, even before things were written down, from the time of the Buddha, but mindfulness predates even Buddhism because it's awareness and nobody owns awareness. But so far, science has really not come close to understanding the human capacity for awareness, even what awareness is or what thinking is. But thinking uncontrolled can be both heaven and also hell. It can drive us insane. And especially when we're trying to fix what we think is broken, but when it's not broken. And so we emphasize in Mbsr, and we say it like this in these words to people with heart disease, cancer, AIDS, chronic pain, all sorts of conditions that medicine has not been able to help them with 100%, if at all. And we say to them, look, from our perspective, as long as you're breathing, there's more right with you than wrong with you, no matter what's wrong with you. And we're going to take the next 8 weeks and pour energy in the form of attention to access your own awareness and see what happens when we exercise that muscle, so to speak, and learn how to live with the actuality of things in a way that gives us a new dimension of freedom to inhabit. So we're not trying to fix anything or make anything go away or cure anything. And it turns out that when we started doing that with people with heart disease and chronic pain and all the other kinds of conditions, that they often went back to their doctors after 8 weeks of Mbsr and said, you know, that program that you sent me to did more for me in 8 weeks than your medical treatments have done for me in 8 years. And things like that. And the doctors are going, whoa, what kind of magic is happening down there in the basement of the medical center? And the answer is no magic, or that the magic is in our humanity. And we haven't discovered it, even though, as I said, it's right beneath our noses. But it's not about the breath or any other object of attention. It's about, and if you know English, you'll get this. It may not be so easy to translate, but it's about the attending, how we are while we are paying attention, the attending. And what the attending leads to, opens us to, is the awareness that's our kind of true nature. That we don't have to get, we were born with it, we can't lose it to a first approximation, but we never get any training in how to inhabit it, because all the training we get in school is about thinking of various kinds, analytical, constructive, deconstructive, all sorts of, synthetic. And in the end, it's like we can't even get to sleep a lot of the time because we start thinking. And so we're dysregulated. Awareness can hold thinking in a way that regulates everything. And then we have a new dimension of freedom, not after 6 years or 60 years of meditating in a cave someplace or in a monastery, but right now in this moment, in this only moment. And so we've tried over the past 42 years to make that door as open as possible and as inviting as possible so that people will enter and then engage in the practice in this kind of non-dualistic way. So it's not about getting rid of my pain or fixing or curing. It's about putting out the welcome mat for things as they are and then seeing if there's a new way to be in relationship to it, which is actually liberating right now in this moment without having anything else having to be different. I call that, technically speaking, because when I was at MIT, I coined this phrase because I was trying to communicate these kinds of things in a political domain in the 1960s to an MIT-based audience. So I call that an orthogonal rotation in consciousness. It's like once you drop into your own awareness, which we can't say is your own because no one owns it, and it's so much bigger than you are or that we understand. But once you drop into awareness, then you basically are inhabiting a new dimension with which to understand what's unfolding in life and how to respond to it in authentic ways that have the potential to be actually valuable, useful, healing to yourself and others. And the way I usually frame it is that we've all had this experience. You have something happen in your life. And if you're paying attention, which is kind of the gateway to awareness, then if you're paying attention, you might learn something. Just from somebody's facial expression when you say something that you wish you hadn't said, and you see the pain it causes on someone else's face, and you remember that because you noticed it, okay? You were paying attention. If you're not paying attention, you just, like a billiard ball just bouncing around off the walls. But if you're paying attention, you'll see something, you'll hear something, you'll feel something, you'll learn something. So Mbsr is about like inviting people in. Can they learn something? Learn something about myself, not about my disease, but about my ease, about my true nature, about my beauty. Most people don't come into the Mbsr thinking about their beauty, but it's very important to reflect back to them. As I said, there's more right with you than wrong with you. We often don't notice what's right with us and nurture it, honor it, bow to it, and then use it to grow. So out of this learning comes growing. Growing means somehow you're a little bit bigger than you were before. You feel better when you come out of class than when you were in class, because maybe you can't put it into words, but you feel like something's right here. And I don't know what it is. And it's not in the book, and it's not in the teacher, but it is in the room. And you can feel it, and different people feel it differently. Out of that learning comes a new way of being in relationship to what you hate, what the most unwanted, what you fear, what's most painful. We're not trying to make it go away. We're not trying to explain it even. We're just saying, can you hold it like a mother would hold her child, or a father would hold his child, when the child is in, some kind of distress, and the parent knows this will pass. The parent knows the law of impermanence that the Buddhists talk so much about. This will pass. But right now for the child, this is not passing. They need the mother's body, the contact, and so forth. So that's like actually what's being transmitted is healing. A coming to terms with things as they are. And the mother might just say, it's okay for now, it's okay. And you rock, and it's okay. There's nothing I can do, but nothing you need to do. It's just okay. And a lot of it's silent. It's just body to body, breath to breath. And then out of that, I call that healing. Healing is a coming to terms with things as they are. It's not fixing, it's not curing, and it's not surrendering. It's just recognition. And then out of that recognition, this becomes your life. So you practice from the time you wake up to the time you go to bed, and it becomes part of your life as much as brushing your teeth. But it's not just in the morning and night when you wake up and go to sleep, but it's the real meditation practices right through the day. This is how we teach it in Mbsr. The real meditation is your life. The real meditation practice is your life. Then over time, without trying to do it, without trying to become somebody better or somebody, more desirable or somebody even healthier, you become healthier. You become bigger than who you thought you were. You become bigger than and less imprisoned by the narrative of me, myself, and who I am, and who's to blame for my hurt, and all of this kind of stuff. It may all be true to some degree, but it's, as we were saying before, not at all true enough. So that arc of paying attention, apprehending the actuality of one moment, and the interconnectedness of the moments, and the impermanence of whatever it is that's arising, like a sensation, unpleasant sensation, or anger, or fear, or the thought, a depressive thought like I'm worthless. And you realize that's just an event in the mind. There's no truth to it. And then you can let it go. That curve of learning from that moment, growing, healing, and transformation, that is a lifetime's engagement. And that's what Mbsr, in my heart of hearts, is actually catalyzing in people. Now, it doesn't happen magically, so you do have to practice. You have to practice. And if you are going to teach this kind of stuff, I hope you're beginning to feel the intention behind my words, that it's not possible to teach mindfulness or Mbsr or any other kind of mindfulness-based intervention unless it's coming out of your lifetime commitment to practice. Otherwise, it collapses into being a cognitive behavioral intervention. And you're following the protocol, you're painting by the numbers, and it may even help some people, but it doesn't have this non-dual, non-instrumental, transformative, orthogonal Dharma dimension that actually does all the work of healing. And it does it in no time, and it does it across the lifespan. And everybody will experience that differently. And so every mindfulness teacher or Mbsr teacher needs to, one, yes, follow the program. I mean, there's a curriculum for a reason, but that's the written down curriculum. That's the explicit curriculum. But without understanding the implicit curriculum, and the people in Bangor, North Wales, Becca Crane and her colleagues have written a book on this. Without that implicit curriculum, you're not teaching Dharma, you're not teaching Mbsr, you're not teaching mindfulness. And from my perspective, you might as well not do it, because it's confusing to people when you take the sort of deep dimensionality of mindfulness and you turn it into a monodimensional protocol. No matter how sensible it seems, that's not what we're talking about here. And what I love is that, and I see so many people on the screen like Gwenola Hébert and Marie-Ange and all sorts of people. I'm not going to, Marie-Ange Pratil. And if I go one more, maybe I'll see other people I know. I can't say that I do, and I'm not going to go through all the screens, but there's Lena and Petri Pennanen in Finland, or unless you're in Germany. But my point is that you're all teaching mindfulness the way I'm talking about it. In other words, you're not talking about Jon Kabat-Zinn's way of teaching mindfulness, even though there may be tremendous overlap. I barely know how to teach mindfulness. I have to keep asking myself in every moment, what is called for now? Otherwise, I'll be just following, as you say, Franco, a protocol in my own head to look smart or to be coherent or to, whatever it is. And that would be a betrayal of not only the Dharma, but of your willingness to spend 3 hours here on the screen. A total betrayal. So this is asking a lot of us. But we say to our patients, or people say, well, how could you give a 45-minute body scan to people with chronic back pain? How can you possibly ask them to lie down for 45 minutes and listen to this interminable voice that doesn't seem to be going anywhere when they're in so much pain? And I say, well, why couldn't you have made it 10 minutes and just get to the point, give them the instructions and let them do it? And you can see how instrumentalizing that would be. And my answer, and this came up in 1979 right away, how could you possibly ask, the doctors would say, the anesthesiologists would say, ask our patients, our chronic pain patients, to meditate for 45 minutes, even lying down, because they're in so much pain. And I'm saying, well, if you think that meditation is having a pleasant experience, then of course, yeah, a 10-minute pleasant experience, that'd be great. I want it to be long enough so that they'll get bored, so that they'll be anxious, so that they'll have pain come up, impatience come up, all sorts of different mind states and body states, and then actually realize for themselves, oh, that's not separate from the curriculum. That is the curriculum. That's my life in this moment. Then mindfulness would be of no use unless it's big enough to hold it just like that. And that's one of the, I think, most powerful things about Mbsr is that when you take that kind of perspective on the practice, then you're not attached to an outcome. You're giving people a practice that's a wisdom practice, that's a compassion practice. And whether they feel better or not in the short run, even 8 weeks, is not the point. We're trying to launch them like Cape Kennedy, sort of a launching platform for living life differently only for the rest of their lives. So the 8 weeks is just the beginning of something that's, as I like to put it, a love affair, which you would not want to miss your moments, because if you miss them over days, weeks, months, years, and decades, you could drop into your grave at the end of your life. And right before you drop into your grave, you have this thought, oh my God, I got it all wrong. I misunderstood what the real challenge was here in this lifetime that I've been given, and then you die. So that's why they call in yoga, and what we do with the body scan, we do that in the yoga pose called the corpse pose. And without being maudlin about it, it's called the corpse pose for a reason. And although there are 84,000 yoga poses and 10 variations of each one of those yoga poses, the corpse pose is said to be the most difficult. Why? Because it's inviting you to die now. Die to the future. Die to the past and wake up in the present moment. Okay. And so that's what mindfulness is. It's wakefulness, but it does require dying to your personal pronouns. I, me, and mine. I'm in so much pain. I am so, inadequate or hopeless, or those I statements, or feeling threatened by others because it would, impinge on my comfort zone. Well, okay, we understand all that, but who are you? And that's probably the most powerful meditation practice at all, to just sit and ask yourself, who am I? Or what am I? This is Ramana Maharshi's practice. What am I? And then not answer it. Of course, your mind will come up with a million answers, but that's okay. And now I want to flip, before I stop talking, Franco, I want to just flip this and just ask you, is what we've been engaging in now for basically an hour and 10 minutes?
Yes.
Has this been meditation practice? Is this the meditation practice, or are we just talking about the meditation practice? And ask yourself that for a moment. Maybe we can actually talk and still be engaging in mindfulness. If we're not, then it's just one talking head to another. But if we're engaging in awareness, then you're drinking in what I'm saying. I'm moving my lips and my tongue and air out of my lungs in a way that's nobody really understands how we do this, but we all can do it, which is one example of our genius. And it's moving into the microphone on my laptop, and it's going through the entire globe, and then it's coming into your receiver, laptop or computer, and it's generating vibrations that are going to your ears, and you're following this sentence, and I don't even know how I'm generating it. So from that point alone, it's demonstrating that we're remarkable geniuses, that we're miraculous beings. We hardly understand anything about the mind or language or embodiment. And yet we often get depressed or feel anxious or hopeless. And so I want to stress that this is really a love affair with the potential to be the beauty that you already are in every conceivable way. And then moment by moment, by moment, by moment, by moment. Not trying to be Franco or me or anybody else, even, your teachers, whoever they are and whoever you honor in that way. They don't want you to be them. They have enough trouble being them. What your teachers need is for you to be you, 100%. And then take what's useful in the forms, like an Mbsr form. Don't teach Mbsr unless the form of it is Mbsr. Call it something else and teach whatever you like, but don't call it Mbsr unless you're following the curriculum, the inner curriculum and the outer curriculum, the explicit curriculum and the implicit curriculum. And that's, a challenge. It's not saying that you can't do whatever you want to do, but it's saying be careful what you call it, because you may be generating all sorts of karmic problems for yourself as well as for, everybody else. I'll stop there, Franco.
Thank you, Jon. So it's always arising how much the Mbsr, the practice of Mbsr and teaching Mbsr, it's a service. My feeling that we are not teaching, but try to be in service of the other, of the wisdom of the other person, and not me, but the practice, about the process, about the method. So we are offering a method. We are not helping the other to become more wisdom. Just we are sharing a method, and a Mbsr is a method because the other person can find their wisdom. And it's a long life. It's a long life, long life.
The word that I've come to, but it, is really more like the Chinese understanding of the word Tao, that it's a way, with a capital W, like a way of being.
Yeah.
But often you have to be careful what language you use. If you're working in a hospital or a corporation, of course, you have to modulate your language. Now, I also want to be sensitive to the fact that Isabella and Genevieve are working like crazy to keep up the steady stream of the translation. And maybe we should take a 5-minute break or something like that. Would you be okay with that? And we'll do this several times for all of you so that we don't just get overloaded. If you're happy to sit in front of your screen, great. If you want to even shut off your video and then come back, also great. And also, I want to say hello to all of you who are on the live stream. It may be like 1,500 to 2,000 people who are not on our screens. I want you to know we feel you. We know you're there. We know you're no different from us. We know that you've got better things to do with your time than to be here. So your reason for being here is of great interest, not just to me, but should be to you, because it's like, what can this actually birth or give rise to in you that will in some sense be of benefit to the world? And I'll just leave you with that. Let's say we'll come back in 5 minutes. Does that work for everybody?
Absolutely.
And once again, profound gratitude to Isabella and Genevieve.
See you later.
Bye-bye.
Okay. Can you hear me, Jon?
Oh, yeah, I can. And Franco, what I was thinking was, if it's all right with you, it feels to me like we've covered so much ground already that maybe it would be good to have a stretch of time where we hear from other people and have a period of dialogue.
Yes.
Would that be all right with you?
Yes, absolutely. So I can open now. Better is to raise the hand and to have some question. Is correct, Jon?
Yes.
So, and as I said before, I invite you to have possible the question in English. And if are both in English and Italian, it can be short, condensed. Thank you so much. So who wanted to make some question can raise the electronic hand. We can see you in this moment. So also in the bar the commands of the Zoom. There is the raise the hand. Should be on the 3 points, white points. No, reaction. Where there is a reazione or reaction, you can raise the hand, alza la mano in Italian. You can raise your hand and I can introduce you. Okay, Paulette. Okay, Paulette Miller. Can you talk, Paulette? I think your mic. Yeah.
Yes. Hi. Thank you so much for this. I really appreciate it. I have a question for Jon.
Let me find you first.
I don't have a video.
Okay.
I don't have a video, but
okay. We'll take you, but from now on, I want to see the people that I'm talking to. So no more questions from people who don't have video. But go ahead.
Okay. Thank you. How you mentioned that?
And tell us where you're calling from.
I'm calling from Rhode Island, the United States.
Okay.
So thank you for this great opportunity to bring this question to the forum. Jon, you mentioned that how we are attending leads us to an awareness of our true nature. And I can understand that, and that's a beautiful statement. But I was wondering if there's more to attending than to just our true nature. Is it more about also the true nature of the world and how things are in the world, more of a the Four Noble Truths?
Well, yes, of course. I mean,
okay.
I didn't specify what your true nature is, but it's boundless. If we were, I mean, one thing that I might as well say, just it's so obvious, but it's worth pointing out in meditations and guided meditations that when you're resting in awareness and you're practicing, say, objectless awareness or even object-focused attending, and you start to bring awareness to your own awareness, I wonder if you challenge yourself to see whether you can find the center of your awareness, or whether you can find the circumference or periphery of your awareness. And I don't think you'll be able to find it, because awareness itself is boundless, and it's very often characterized that way in the classical, literature, especially in the Mahamudra and Dzogchen traditions. But look for yourself. I mean, don't believe anything. But if it is boundless, then it's no longer about me. So when I'm talking about your true nature as a human being, of course, you didn't come out of nothing. You don't know what you're going back into, but your nature is completely interwoven with the entire universe. You're only one breath away from not being here in your, at least, living form. So we're dependent on the atmosphere, we're dependent on the ground, we're dependent on all other life in order to live, to eat, to be in wise relationship, to be born, to pass on our genes, so the biosphere is part of it, everything's part of it, the body politic. And so, yes, thanks for asking that question. When I threw in that term true nature, it really wasn't completely appropriate at that particular moment. I just, was, I guess, at a loss for a better way to say it, because it sounds like when you say your true nature, that there's some fixed thing there, or that it's some kind of Buddhist formulation that I'm trying to slip over on people. But it's really a deep inquiry into the nature of mind and the nature of what it means to be human. Okay, Umberto.
Hello, hi, Jon, and thanks a lot for allowing us to talk to you and to join this night. Can you hear me? Yeah.
Totally. Yes.
Cool. Well, I have a very funny question, maybe. It's about the no mind concept. In some tradition, is talked about, it is said that there is, at some point in our practice, we get to a status of no mind. I'm quite confused about it also because usually we don't say that we can't stop talking, we're thinking. So what's no mind, in your opinion, if we can talk about the no mind concept?
Yeah, well, as you know, in my understanding, it comes out of the Zen tradition, the Chinese Chan tradition. Of course, how you translate these things from Chinese to English or to Italian makes a big difference, because so when we say no mind, of course, that's going to generate a lot of ideas in people's heads who have no idea of what meditation is, including that the most common misunderstanding of meditation is that you should have no thoughts. So I think it's much more useful, rather than to reify a statement like no mind, and then you're supposed to experience no mind. So how do you get to a desirable experience? No mind is only one word. How about enlightenment? So all of these are particular kind of reifications of potentially desirable outcomes, but the real practice is about not being attached. And what no mind and enlightenment is, quote unquote, are talking about or pointing towards is no attachment to anything. The one line from the Diamond Sutra that Wei Neng, who turned out to be the 6th Zen Chan patriarch in the Tang Dynasty, China, in the 8th century. He was like, the story was, he was a completely uneducated kitchen boy pounding rice in the kitchen. You probably know the story. And he heard one line of a monk passing by outside his window, and from the Diamond Sutra, and that mind was, develop a mind that clings to nothing. Or there are lots of different translations for what that phrase was, but he just heard those words and he just woke up. Okay, so all of those ways of languaging what happens when we pay attention are meant to be skillful means to point out that, you know, awareness is actually boundless, as I was saying before, and there's no center to it, and there's no you in there, except as a construct, as a thought construct, and a kind of cognitive narrative with emotional overtones and so forth. So it's all about non-identification with a small nature of self. And whether you go in the Mahamudra door, or the Dzogchen door, or the Chan door, or the Mbsr door, they're all meant to be Dharma doors into what ultimately is the same room. And it's very important not to get caught up on unfortunate vocabularies that sometimes create more problems than they solve.
Thank you, Jon.
Thank you. Thanks for that question. Wonderful. Johnny. Oh, yeah, Johnny. You have to unmute yourself.
Ok. Grazie, chiedo scusa se faccio la domanda in italiano, ma perché sarò più efficace e quindi più veloce. Volevo chiedere se trova Jon, intanto ringraziarlo tantissimo per questa bellissima offerta, questo bellissimo regalo, se trova un senso al fatto che pratico mindfulness, persone che praticano mindfulness come me magari da 6-7 anni, mi ha salvato in tantissime situazioni, quindi ne riconosco la grandezza, l'utilità, insegno Mbsr, eppure capitano dei periodi in cui non si pratica più, non pratichi, senti anche magari un disagio, senti il bisogno di farlo, ma comunque per qualche motivo non lo fai e non riesci a farlo fino a quando non ti trovi proprio a stare proprio male che sei al limite, allora lì lo fai. Ecco, non è una domanda perché presuppone una risposta, ma se lui trova un senso, un motivo, una spiegazione. Tutto qui, grazie mille.
So just a moment, John. Isabella, we heard you. So are you in English or Italian channel?
Yeah, she's translating from Italian to English. That's right, because so that all the people who speak English can understand.
So now you have to switch in Italian to translate in Italian. Okay, thank you.
Yeah,
Great,
okay.
Great, Isabella.
You're on. I assume you're on top of that, Isabella, right? Yeah. Well, Johnny, thank you for that, and also thank you for your honesty. I mean, meditation practice, if it's a lifelong engagement, it will have its ups and it will have its downs. It won't always be the same thing. And I appreciate your honesty in saying that sometimes you don't feel like practicing and you don't practice, but you're telling other people that they should be practicing. So notice that. And one of my cardinal principles is that I don't ask anything of other people that I'm not doing at least as much of myself, not in principle or in my life, but now, every day. Okay, so that's something you might just want to look at. But then the question is, well, what do you mean by practice? Does it mean that while you're teaching Mbsr, you have to do a body scan every time you assign a body scan and for that week, and you have to teach, sitting meditation, whatever you're teaching them, do you have to do that? Well, after you've developed your own meditation practice for years and decades, no, you don't necessarily have to be doing that, although that would be a really worthy thing to do, to just be right there with them for the whole week, doing what you've asked them to do. But you can do the practice your way. Now, let me just say more generally, not doing the meditation practice and knowing that you're not doing the meditation practice is doing the meditation practice, because there's no escape from awareness. So you're aware that you're not practicing. And this is very, very clear in yoga. And I like to say, when you're not doing yoga, you're learning an awful lot about what it means to do yoga, because your body will tell you that, certain things are changing because you're not nurturing it in that way. So you can't actually lose in this engagement as long as you're being honest with yourself. I think that it's really important to follow that principle of not asking anybody else to do something that you're not doing at least as much of that day and that week. And if that's hard, then there are two solutions. One is don't teach Mbsr until you're ready to do that. And the other solution is get your ass on the cushion and practice whether you feel like it or not. I don't care, and you shouldn't care either. If you really understand what the practice is, it doesn't matter whether you feel like it or not. You just do it because of the love and the depth of what we're really trying to ignite in other people, or in terms of insight, in terms of passion for life. So I hope that answers your question. I mean, we could have long conversations about this, because I don't want to idealize, you have to be some kind of robot meditator in order to teach mindfulness. If you're a robot, you can't teach mindfulness, no matter how good the instructional set is. You have to be you, but you also have to understand that working with not practicing and practicing is its own form of practice. And if you're in it for life, then you'll be true to yourself. And when you're true to yourself, then there's no kind of hypocrisy in how you're relating to other people and what you're asking of them. But you have to be mindful of that, because there's no mindfulness Gestapo or mindfulness police that are going to come around and, judge you for how good a meditation teacher you are. And no, you can't do that. You have to, in some sense, be the and police wouldn't be the right word, or Gestapo is not the right word, but the kind of and judging wouldn't be the right word, but you have to let the reason why you're teaching in the first place decide how you want to live your life in those moments, because you don't live your life. It doesn't exist in the future. when you get back to your meditation practice. It doesn't exist in the past when you were a terrific meditator and went on all these retreats or whatever your story is, your personal story is. It only exists in this moment. So in that sense, you can keep asking yourself, am I actually living according to what I'm trying to teach? Because if you're not, then there's some kind of discord there. People will feel it, and they'll feel an inauthenticity, and that will not be helpful. Okay, Gianni? Grazie, grazie. Stefano.
Hi, John. Can you hear me?
Can.
First of all, thanks, John, for being here, for this opportunity, because I like so much mindfulness, and I'm so happy to be here also. My question is, I have read the book, The Ipseti and the Almost Nothing of Vladimir Yankelevich, a French philosopher. If he has read this book, do you think that Ipseti can somehow be connected with mindfulness in some way? If yes, how?
What's the title of the book again? I didn't quite catch it.
The Ipseti and the Almost Nothing.
I'm sorry, the ecstasy and the
Almost Nothing. Of
almost nothing?
Yes.
Okay. Am I hearing ecstasy correctly? Is that right? Ecstasy and the almost nothing?
Ipseti.
I'm not getting the first word then.
If you don't know, if you don't know, the Ipseti is a principle that affirms the identity of the individual being with himself, said above all of beings endowed with conscience.
Okay, here is an instance where I would love to have an hour-long conversation with you, Stefano. But what I would basically say is, who wants to know, and where is this question coming from? Okay, because it's very much a conceptual kind of question. And I'm not interested in conceptual questions unless they are related to your direct experience in this moment. So as long as this framework that your philosophical framework that you're asking about has meaning for you, why don't you ask yourself that question and see what comes up, okay? Because I really don't know enough about that particular universe to be able to respond effectively. Okay? No problem. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Jeannie Floyd.
Thank you. Thank you so much for being here. I'm so grateful to be able to speak with you, and I appreciate your comments. I am particularly interested in the Mbsr programs or courses, and I'm wondering how you honor the Buddhist traditions in the Mbsr courses when in general they are described as secular. And for many participants, particularly older participants, when you begin to mention the word Buddhism at all, they begin, oh my goodness, I'm going down the wrong path, or I'm nervous about this.
Sure.
How do you bring this into do you bring this into your programs?
No, but unless someone raises the question like you're doing, I've stopped using the word secular. I used it for a while. What I call what we do, Mbsr, or even this, is what I call mainstream mindfulness. In other words, if you frame it as a Buddhist meditation, then you're absolutely right. You've got gateways already that some people say, I don't want to go through that gateway. I don't want to go through that door. I got my own religion, and I've had enough of religion. And so while mindfulness is often spoken of as the heart of Buddhist meditation, and there's no question that it is, it's pure awareness. Okay, so it can't possibly be Buddhist any more than the law of gravity is Italian because of Galileo. So what we're trying to do is find a way of introducing the depth of what the Buddhists would refer to as Dharma, the kind of way things are, but also these teachings that have historical validity, but in different cultures and different continents, and bring it into the mainstream of our lives in ways that have value if they do. So there's no catechism, there's no philosophy, there's no religious belief systems that you have to adapt. And there's no kind of, it's not stealth Buddhism. We're not trying to trick you into becoming a Buddhist. But if you understand what the word Buddha actually means, which means awaken, then we are, in some sense, trying to help you recognize your Buddha nature, or that you are already a Buddha. And famously, I put in wherever you go, there you are, but famously, a young girl who was like very strongly identified, or a young woman who was very strongly identified with Buddhism at a particular point. She said, when I was a Buddhist, it drove my parents crazy, but when I'm a Buddha, nobody seems to mind at all. I hope that answers your question.
Well, you know, it puts me on the path, the idea of the awareness that that this is what we're gaining from Buddhism, essentially awareness. I think I'll get it. But you know, when you use the term metta, that of course, you know, again,
well, I haven't used the word metta, have I?
No, I'm not saying that you do, but occasionally it is. You know, if we are practicing loving kindness,
yes.
Sometimes the word metta comes up.
Totally.
And then, of course, that points out, oh, here, this is a strange word that you know. So I anticipate needing to deal with this.
Situation. Are you teaching Mbsr or?
No, I'm not. I'm getting ready to. I would like to. And
yeah, well, you don't have to call it metta. You can just call it. You know, I wouldn't. I don't think call it metta. When I teach Mbsr, I don't call the loving kindness practice metta. If someone says to me in class, is this the metta meditation that I trained at some monastery or meditation center? I'll say, yes, it is. And then we go into a story, just like the one we just discussed of like, yeah, so we're not trying to hide that mindfulness comes out of Buddhism, but we're also making it very clear that it's not Buddhist and it's pure awareness. So, you know, but there are a lot of different ways to understand it, that the Buddhists have been experimenting in the laboratory of being human and being embodied for thousands of years. Why not learn from them and from every other culture that's cultivating that? So in a certain way, it's like, it doesn't become a problem unless it resonates for you as a problem. And then it's interesting to actually just hold that in awareness without judging it one way or the other and see what comes up.
No, thank you. It's not a problem for me. I just am trying to begin.
Very good. I totally get it. And sooner or later, it may become a problem for you. It's good to be ready.
Thank you so much, Jon.
You're welcome. Silverio.
Can you hear me now?
Totally.
Yes. Okay. Jon, first of all, let me explain why I'm so grateful to be here. I do a lot of mindfulness with Franco every week online myself, but also I teach it to friends sometimes. I do sessions with friends. So it's not only very good for me, incredibly, it helped me to improve symptoms of neurosis, which is not easy, as you know, but also helpful for my friends. Okay, so it's a joy to join Jon.
Grazie.
Okay, so I have a very specific question. When you reach the awareness, I'm talking about a deep awareness of your deep emotions. And let's say, for example, a very deep irrational anxiety, which not only makes you worried, but also creates not only emotions, but also neurological blocks, pain in the head or in the body, etc., etc. You know very well. So you reach the full, and you know that it's irrational. You know that maybe it comes from a childhood trauma. It doesn't have any reason to exist, etc., etc. You know it's irrational, but it's there. You have it.
It's not there. It's here.
It's here. Yes. It's well. It's.
I know that, but it's an important distinction that I like to make in English, because we often say it's there, but we mean it's here, and I think it's helpful to be specific.
So you reach awareness of it. Now, do you think it's better to react with a positive emotion like loving kindness, gratitude, etc., or with a neutral emotion of acceptance? I have seen both, and there's a big difference. The positive emotion, of course, is very pleasant, it's very healing, but it's more of a cover. Whereas the neutral emotion, without judgment, without thinking, pure acceptance as it is, it's much deeper. Why? Because it lets the flow of energy into that part of the brain, and so it helps more profoundly to heal the problem. At the end, I think it's better to have both. What do you think?
Well, I think you answered your own question until you asked me what I thought. So I'll tell you what I think. But you did already answer your own question.
Yes, but why?
Okay. So you're teaching MBSR, right, or some kind of mindfulness program or other?
Yes, I'm not qualified. I've never done.
I don't care about qualified. I'm not qualified either. None of us are really qualified to teach this in its depth, but we have to do our part.
I've done seminars with Franco. I've done.
Okay.
So what is
a lot of it has to do with what's called in the Buddhist tradition skillful means. What is the most useful way to work with this in an individual person? Now, you're talking about yourself, but you're also asking more generalizably for other people who come with this kind of thing. And one of the real skills of a good teacher is to recognize what the student needs and not give the student sort of advanced mathematics when they need 1 + 1 = 2. Okay. 1 + 1 = 2 is incredibly important, or 0 and 1, let's say, incredibly important, because you can make the entire universe with 0 and 1. So it's not a question of better or less than, but skillful means are, meant to be appropriate for the moment. So my own preference, of course, is to just embrace whatever it is in pure awareness. Okay. So not to cultivate metta around it or loving kindness, or towards oneself, self-compassion and all that stuff. If you need it, that's fine. But what we're really teaching in mindfulness is the capacity that's inborn. So it may terrify you, but you already have it, to just be here and put the welcome mat out for things exactly as they are, and not rationalize it or sort of color it in any way, shape, or form. In the Buddhist tradition, they sometimes, especially in the Tibetan tradition, they use various kinds of what are called antidotes. So the antidote to fear, or the antidote to pity, or the antidote self-pity, or the antidote to anxiety or whatever. And that can be very skillful for people who just can't or won't rest in awareness. But the fundamental practice is just, you answered the question, it's resting in awareness no matter what. And if you really don't have an agenda, if you're not doing this so that you'll feel better, or even that you'll grow, or even that you'll learn, in spite of what I said before about that trajectory of, learning, growing, healing, and transformation, but you're just doing it because it arose, then the liberation potential is optimized right there and then. And you don't have to spend the next 20 years either in psychotherapy or, sort of struggling with these issues. Now, I'm not diminishing how much trauma we carry or how much self-hatred we might have towards ourselves. So this may seem like a very insensitive way to approach it, to just say, put the welcome mat out for that. But from my experience working with thousands and thousands of people, if you don't believe you're capable of it, you're never going to be capable of it. But if you are open to at least putting your toe in the water and seeing, even for a brief moment, one in-breath, one out-breath, can I actually hold it, not to tolerate it, but to simply investigate it, let it be here and befriend it, all sorts of things happen that wouldn't happen if you were trying to fix it in one way or another. And the antidotes are a skillful means, but they also have a fixing element to them. So I hope that answers your question. It's a very wonderful question.
Yes, sorry. So to be clear, you agree that neutral is better than positive?
I'm not so into your framework, the way you're languaging it, as neutral. I don't see that as neutral. And I don't see the other as positive. The positive could be really negative if it's not helpful. So I would let go of, because those are kind of judgment labels.
Okay.
Okay. And I would let go of that and just bring pure awareness to it and see what happens without being attached to the outcome. But if it seems, if you're sharing this with another person rather than just in your own practice, that's in some sense, they don't understand what you're talking about, or it could potentially cause harm. Then, of course, you just say, hey, sort of go with this and give them a practice that might feel much more, they might feel much more connected to in the short run, because they could be in a life crisis where they just can't even hear what you're saying. Never mind tap into resting in awareness when the house is on fire. So that's part of the skill of a teacher, is knowing when to teach what and to what degree. And all of it requires that you meet the person where they are and see them as a whole human being. And then very often, if it's people with strong psychological difficulties and so forth, you have to be willing to hold their well-being for them, sometimes for years, before they see that they can hold it for themselves. And that's where there's no separation between mindfulness and compassion, by the way. So it's not like here's mindfulness and here's compassion, and I'm a professional mindfulness person, and those other people, they're professional, and they're self-identifying around mind. It's insane. As the Buddhists like to say, two wings, one bird. Okay, there's no separation between mindfulness and compassion.
And Jon, if I can add something to
Silverio.
Yes,
please,
thank you
Franco.
so much. But the last words are very touching me, because I'm also teaching Mbsr and also another program, the CCT, about compassion. I can believe how much, and through the CCT program, I understand how much and more and more implicit compassion, love there is in stay open, in the holding, embracing what is coming. And it is that we have to come close to take a step towards, and sometimes to have a step back. And sometimes and I don't use in my courses the word acceptance. In Italian, it's a very
accettare.
I prefer like holding, welcoming.
Yeah.
The way, so you have space.
I agree in English.
Yeah.
It's a mixed bag, the word acceptance.
Because sometimes it's like acceptance that push the button. Now you have a problem, acceptance. It's also oriented to fixing something, to change something. And really, it's about neutral acceptance. I think that is not neutral. So welcoming and acceptance, there's a lot of love for ourselves, out love of self-compassion, very deep love. Sometimes the acceptance and the welcoming is a process, not push the button. It can take months, sometimes can take years. Probably there is something in our like traumas and suffering that we will bring with us all the life. And the acceptance is a process, moment by moment. It's based on love. It's based on love. No, I think for me it can be neutral acceptance.
So
I'm in accord with you. I think accettare, or radical acceptance, or radical acceptance. One has to understand what that's pointing to, and what it's pointing to is equanimity. What it's pointing to is awareness itself so stable that it can hold the actuality of something in awareness, even if it's horrific. So acceptance doesn't mean passive resignation. Do you say resignare, or I don't know, but
Resignarsi.
Resignarsi. It doesn't have anything to do with that. It just means the bare recognition of things as they are, and that you've accepted they're like this. You don't have to like it. The house can be on fire in 1,000 different ways. Of course, we have to accept that. But you're pointing to something, both you and Silverio, pointing to something that's really critical here, and that is how we use language in teaching mindfulness is unbelievably important, because how you say something and how it's heard, there may be a universe of distance between them. And you have to be sensitive enough to understand how people are going to misunderstand pretty much everything you say. So you have to keep checking to make sure they understand what you're really pointing to, or, you know, and I'll give you an example since we're talking about teaching mindfulness. In the early days, I would do interviews with people in the middle of the 8 weeks, what I called following the kind of, moon explorations over mid-course corrections. So I'd meet with people in the middle of the 8 weeks, and I'd ask them how it's going. And then they say, well, I'm having a terrible time with my meditation, let's say. And I'll say, well, what is your meditation practice? Well, I say, I do exactly what you tell me. I sit down and I think about my breathing. And I'm going, you've heard me say thousands, if not tens of thousands of words, but you've never, ever heard me voice the words, sit down and think about your breathing. I never say, think about your breathing. It's not about thinking about your breathing, but I can say, feel the breathing, ride on the waves of the breath, go with the feeling of the breath in the body. I can say that a million different ways, but people will hear it however they want to hear it. So as a good teacher, you have to check with people, what is your actual practice? Because otherwise you'll think they're practicing the way you want them to, and they may not be. Okay, so that's a kind of really a fine tuning is required really in every class in order to make sure people are, that's the nice thing about guided meditations, is then you don't have to give them instructions because they are just following along with your voice. Okay.
Thank you very much. Now I'm more clear. Integration is
glad to hear that.
Silverio,
glad to hear that. Is that Sylvia from Estonia?
Yes. Okay. Please, Sylvia.
Yes. Hello. I'm Sylvia. I'm from Tallinn, Estonia, and I have to be honest, I forgot my question, or half of it has been answered.
Wonderful.
So
That's wonderful. Just start over.
Yes. All right. Number one, I feel very passionately about maybe one day becoming an Mbsr teacher, but I'm very new to this, only a year in my pocket. But my question was a little bit about this. I have a lot of passion towards other people, a lot of compassion, a lot of, what's the word? Patience when it comes to people around me. And I notice when something is, when somebody feels wrong in the room, and I try to help them. And then, but then this kind of being these same things I just said to myself while practicing it, I think it's maybe I'm at the place at the moment where it has become more and more difficult to accept, be compassionate and patient with myself. And then I see myself, or I catch myself, let's say, lying to myself sometimes that I will do my practice and then I won't, which is like a practical thing. But then also, I don't know, these white lies we tell ourselves that
I tell myself, speak in the first person. So you're really being honest. These white lies, I tell myself, okay?
These white lies, well, they're not even white lies. They're very cheeky lies sometimes. So I tell myself that you said something earlier that it's not about becoming a better person or a more liked person, but I still cannot help hearing these voices in my head telling me, you will become better, you will become
Yeah, well, you've been conditioned your entire life to think that way about yourself. And if mindfulness is going to be liberative for you, never mind teaching it to somebody else. If it's going to really be of value to you, don't you think you're going to need to, at some point, just sit down and watch what's going on in your own mind, and then realize that maybe you've become a prisoner of those kinds of thoughts and emotions. And as soon as you are willing to see them just as thoughts and emotions and not as you, not as self, or not as who Sylvia really is, then you can drop them, and ultimately they will also drop you. Because I see at the moment, like you've only been at this a year. I would say it takes about 25 years to become a real mindfulness teacher. Okay, so you probably don't even know the rules yet in terms of how to work with your own mental states, so to speak. That's not to discourage you at all. That's just to say, be careful not to fall into too much judging around yourself, but really wonderful to notice, to be aware of all of the kinds of lies, white lies, inaccuracies, all of that stuff. And then you can use them as the object of your meditation practice. And you can ask yourself, is that thought actually true? Or is my anxiety, if you bring awareness to it, is my awareness of my anxiety actually anxious? Is my awareness of my insecurity actually insecure? And you can actually experience the nature of your awareness, and you'll find out it's not anxious and it's not insecure, and it doesn't need to be funny either, or to be cheeky, to use your word. And so all of a sudden you've got a whole other dimension of reality that is, maybe we could say, the truer you to mature your way into, and it will take time. And that's why you need to practice. And I don't kid around about this. I often say it just this way, as if your life depended on it, because it does. And that means rigorous daily meditation discipline. And it also means understanding that that's not the real meditation practice. That's only the kind of preliminary. The real meditation practice is everyday life. Your whole life is the meditation practice, is the love affair. And the formal meditation practice for an hour a day, or whatever you decide to do, plus going on retreats every once in a while, that's like tuning your instrument, tuning your violin before you play your violin. You need to tune your instrument before you take it out on the road. And you need to tune it every day. And ultimately, you need to tune it moment by moment as you're flying the airplane, so to speak, to mix metaphors. Okay, I hope that's helpful to you. But you have to realize this is a marathon. This is not a sprint. So it's your whole life that's here. And over time, your life will teach you what's wise and where you could easily get caught up and go round and round in circles, not liking yourself, but being stuck doing all these habitual things that keep you stuck. Thank you. Thank you for your courage in asking that kind of a question.
An 8-week Mbsr course did this for me that I took this summer. So thank you very much, Jon Kabat-Zinn.
Okay, thank you. Shall we do a little bit more and then we'll go back to our conversation, Franco? Would that work for you? You're muted.
We come back to our conversation when you like, but now we have Antonio. It's okay. We go
Yes,
on.
of course. No,
Okay.
I'm just saying, I'm just checking in
perfect.
with you.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
we'll keep doing
Thank
this
you.
for a while.
Yeah.
And just keep on remembering, this is as much of a part of the meditation practice as this. Absolutely as much a part of it, as long as you're willing to be awake and aware and not lost in thought or reactivity. Or when you do get lost in thought, because of course we all will, and in judging and so forth, just notice that, and then it's already gone. and you're back. And resting, as I was saying, in awareness, even though you've been looking at your screen for, more than 2 hours now. Antonio.
Hi, John. It's wonderful to
Buonasera.
meet you. How to learn to better recognize in self-practice the emotions we feel.
Is that the question?
Okay.
How to better recognize the emotions that you're actually feeling in the practice. Well, which practice are you talking about? Are you talking about like sitting meditation or the body scan or formal meditation practice of some kind or other?
Meditazione seduta.
Sitting meditation.
Sitting
Okay,
meditation,
wonderful. All right. So let's just walk our way through it now a little bit, all together, all of us. I think everybody's sitting. How wonderful. So to start off, I would say, well, we're all sitting, but do we know that we're sitting? And I'm not talking about thinking about sitting. I'm talking about, can you feel the body sitting? And how is it? Can you feel the sensations in the backs of your legs if you're sitting on a chair or couch or whatever? Can you feel the spine and rising out of the pelvis and the head balanced on the neck? Can you feel the shoulders hanging off the rib cage? Can you feel the feet flat on the floor? And so this is what you might call the body door. We're feeling or experiencing or bringing awareness to or attention to our body. The first establishment or foundation of mindfulness in the Buddhist tradition. And then we're watching, say, the body as a whole, sitting here breathing. We can feel it. We can attend to it. The root meaning of the word attention. And so we basically ride on the waves of our own breathing in the body, moment by moment by moment. Full awareness of this breath coming into the body. Fullness of this breath leaving the body. And full awareness of the body as a whole, as an entirety, sitting here breathing. Eyes open is fine, eyes closed in front of your screen is also fine for now. And of course, there's also hearing. You're hearing my voice. And when my voice stops, or in between the words, or underneath the words, there's what we call silence. And it's never not here. It's never not here. And can you rest in this silent wakefulness right in this moment? And then we discover that the mind has a life of its own. So it's going to go here and there, and it's going to fall into anxiety or, some kind of ruminative stream of one kind or another. And that's not a problem with mindfulness meditation or formal meditation practice. That's the curriculum. We notice, we're aware that the mind waves. It has a life of its own. It waves just like the Adriatico waves or the Mediterraneo. It waves in the same way, depending on the atmospheric conditions going on in your own head. It's not a problem at all. And we're breathing through the whole of it. So once we recognize that we have these storms and weather patterns in the mind, then the awareness doesn't have any problem with any of it, because the awareness is like the sky. It's like the air. It just holds it all, but it's not caught in any of it. And then you're free right in this moment. And you don't have to use the breath to shut out your feelings or to suppress your thinking. You just don't take any of it personally in this moment, or you notice in this moment how personally you are taking it, and that you're totally lost and you've forgotten about the body sitting here breathing. And if so, then you come back. And that's an act of sanity, a radical act of both sanity and wisdom and compassion. And then moment by moment, it's like a totally new beginning. Just the way every breath coming into the body, every in-breath, new beginning. Every out-breath, complete letting go, complete letting things be just as they are. And then nothing becomes an obstacle. Nothing becomes an obstacle. If the house is burning down while you're meditating and you smell smoke, don't keep meditating and just say to yourself, oh, I'm just feeling smoke. You get up. Okay, so this is where wisdom comes into it. There are times that you stop sitting and you act with full awareness, with mindfulness, sometimes with great speed, and to rescue other people, to save all beings, to save whoever's in the house, to save whatever you can, including yourself. That's all basically part of the meditation practice. So it's not shutting out anything that needs doing, but it's letting the doing, whatever doing we choose to engage in, come out of being, moment by timeless moment. And when we live in this way, when we practice in this way, both formally and informally, then life itself becomes the meditation practice. And it also becomes a phenomenal adventure where whatever arises in your life, not just in your meditation practice, becomes the curriculum, and in some sense, a gift calibrated in that moment to give you exactly what you need to find the measure of your own equanimity or your own clarity or your own fear or your own self-centeredness. And then notice that too can be held in awareness without idealizing anything or the need to obliterate anything. And then that's it. And then you just repeat for the rest of your life.
Okay.
Does that answer your question or come anywhere near answering your question?
Yes, thank you, John. Thank
You're
you.
welcome. You're welcome, Antonio. Salvatore.
Just a moment. So Antonio, okay. And so.
And Anna will take you next.
Yes. So we have Anna first.
Okay, Anna first. Okay.
Yeah, sorry.
Can you unmute yourself?
Okay. Can you hear me?
Buonasera.
Yeah.
First of all, thank you for this time that you're giving us. And then my question, as a beginner in this world of mindfulness, is it all right if the great pleasure, the great strength that we get from it is coming from the sharing, the condivision with others that enhance this experience of practicing mindfulness?
I'm not sure I'm understanding what you're asking. Again, could you phrase it slightly differently?
Okay. When I'm doing the practice together with others,
when you're meditating together with other people?
Yeah. I'm feeling that the great pleasure that I am having in doing that is coming from the discussion that I have later with my colleagues.
Wonderful.
And of course, indeed, the mindfulness give us the predisposition to have this mood, but I'm feeling that to have predisposition of sharing, but
attitude of sharing.
Yeah.
Okay.
Attitude thing. Yeah.
Well, that's all beautiful.
Okay.
That's all beautiful. I'm not sure I understand. Is there a problem here? Or are you asking me if something's okay?
Yeah, is it okay if the main point of my meditation is the sharing with others?
Yeah, and especially, look, I heard you say that it gives you great pleasure to meditate with other people and then to share your experiences.
Yeah.
Is that correct?
Yes.
That's very, very beautiful. That's very beautiful, as long as you're not attached to it.
Okay.
As soon as you notice that you're attached to it, then
it might be a problem.
It may become a problem because then you're coloring the experience to have a certain kind of result. But mindfulness is not about not experiencing pleasant experiences. Is when you're experiencing pleasant experiences to know, and I mean not just conceptually, but with awareness, to know that you're experiencing something pleasant. And when it's unpleasant, to know that it's unpleasant. And when it's neither pleasant nor unpleasant, to know that. That's called the second foundation of mindfulness. So there's no problem anywhere until you start identifying with it, with the pleasant, and wanting more of it. And not wanting what's not pleasant, and so pushing it away. So the wisdom is to actually stay in the awareness and to deeply enjoy whatever is pleasing and pleasant, but not be caught and imprisoned by it because you're attached to a particular kind of outcome. The sharing is an incredibly important part of this practice, whether it's mindfulness-based stress reduction, mindfulness-based cognitive therapy, or any other formal meditation group. Talking about your experience, sharing your experience, especially if you're being honest about it, it's like there's no one teacher. We're all teaching each other when we're willing to be authentic in how we talk about our own experience. So you see that all the time in the Mbsr classroom. Somebody with a chronic pain condition or with cardiac disease will say something, and every other person in the room deeply, not just touched, but a certain kind of extra freedom from that, because wow, if that person can not be so limited by their obvious limitations, then maybe I also can be free to not be limited by my obvious limitations. And that's like part of the love affair. Does that make sense to you, Anna? You have to unmute again.
Yeah, off. Your mic is off.
Unmute yourself. Okay.
Anna.
I get the nonverbal.
So just Jon, may I add something, because I totally agree you touched it, and Anna touched it. Anna brought you touched it is a very specific part also the Mbsr course. In the Mbsr course, there is not only the only one, our self-meditation, but the moment of sharing are the most fasting moment of learning. So learning, when we talk about our experience, when we stay close, I would say, to be speaking in the first person, we can take from our experience, because we are always in the experience. We are always experiencing senses, body, feelings, emotion, but we are not aware. And when we are a little bit aware, sometimes there is some judgment. It's not going well. I'm so sad. there is this kind of coming from the mind, but the share is the moment of reflection. Those that we call like inquiry. It's a moment to stay close to our experience, to have a different approach. It's not mentally, but it's more like a reflecting and taking from the fresh experience, because it's a moment that the mind starts to judge, say, meditation is bad, this is not good. And also there is as you say, the common humanity that we share, and we learn a lot in the clarity, in the honesty of speaking, listening. The teacher can listen, we can listen ourselves, we can speak and listen when we are speaking, and we speak when we listen.
Yeah, and presumably that's not just happening in the Mbsr and MBC classroom, that's happening right here.
Yeah.
And so I want to propose, Franco, that before we go any further, that we take another 5-minute break and give the translators some a little bit of a rest, given that they are doing such incredible work. So shall we do that and then come back for our final 35 minutes or something like that?
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Jon.
Okay, wonderful.
So we say in 7 minutes, say?
5 minutes, let's say.
Five.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, keep it short. Okay. Okay, I think we'll start again. I don't see Franco yet, but I'm sure he's coming. But Salvatore, you've been waiting quite a while.
I'm here, Jon. Can you see me?
Yeah, now we can see you.
Okay, perfect. Okay, Salvatore, you're welcome. Okay.
So before you start, Salvatore, Franco, just touching base, shall we take another 3 or 4 people with questions and then go back to your the needs that you were hoping for to round it out so that we finish at the top of the hour?
Yeah.
Okay, very good.
Thank you.
So you tell me when we need to make that transition, okay?
Yes, thank you.
Or just come in and do it. Salvatore.
Yeah.
Hi, Jon. Thank you for being with us today. I'm really so grateful for you being here. And frankly speaking, I had never expected in my life to be able to talk to you in person. So
isn't Zoom great?
I'm so grateful for that. It would be enough, just that. But I want to ask you a question. I started practice mindfulness a couple of years ago, even though I was fascinated by meditation and whatever for many years, but something clicked to me 2 years ago, especially when I read about your work, when you introduced mindfulness in a medical environment as a way to healing for people and help them build up a new relationship with their experience of pain, illness, and whatever. So starting from that, my question is, from an Mbsr perspective, what are your views on depression, and what is the approach you would suggest to a...
I'm sorry, what are my views on what?
On depression.
Depression.
And what's the approach you would suggest to a practitioner of mindfulness, which that can be incidentally maybe me, so it's not the kind of friend, but it's also it's a general question, but it's also something regards me. What would you suggest to a practitioner of mindfulness in dealing with it, especially when it is severe and freezing, that kind of depression that keeps you glued on the bed and stuck on the way to nothing? I mean, so I believe I told everything, and really thank you for being here again.
Well, I'm sure as everybody who just heard you articulate the question is feeling, this is a really not something that I can respond to facilely, okay? Because what I hear you saying is that this is like a huge challenge in your own life. And the sort of major depressive disorder is a gigantic and probably the most common form of the sort of mental stress that we experience on this planet as human beings. So I don't want to give you a facile answer.
There is not, actually.
Yeah. And I don't want mindfulness to ever be offered or proffered as a facile answer to any of life's problems. So that being said, everything that I know about everything that I know about depression from my own experience being a human being, and from our work cultivating mindfulness with people who have various degrees of depression and clinical depression, working with the founders of MBCT, mindfulness-based clinical depression, is that it is in some sense, for whatever reason, a disorder of thought. And so if it is ultimately a disorder of thought, mindfulness gives you a whole other superpower to relate to that superpower, which is thinking, especially when that thinking, when it's very powerfully negative, can take you down into what's often referred to as a black hole. And you implied that as much yourself. So what mindfulness can actually show you is that no matter what the narrative is, the thoughts that are helping you spiral down into depression, or anybody spiral down into depression, they are just thoughts. And no matter how true the narrative is and how exclusive the narrative is, it's not true enough, but it's too narrow, it's just not true enough about who you are. So awareness immediately gives you, in this moment, in the same way that I can ask, is my awareness of my anxiety anxious? You can ask yourself, is my awareness of my depression depressed? Right in that moment. And investigate it. Maybe, may not be, I'm not going to guess because I don't know you at all, but investigate for yourself. So that's a whole universe of bringing the practice to it in a way it takes a lot of energy. It takes a lot of attention when, as you put it yourself, you don't even want to get out of bed. Now, in my old age, I've actually become much more an advocate of not getting out of bed, just meditating in bed. Don't bother getting out of bed. Just meditate in bed. Don't get on your meditation cushion yet. When you wake up in the morning, why not just finish the job, as I like to say? Just wake up and then lie in the corpse pose so that you die to the story of who I am and how depressed I am and what a failure I am and how nobody loves me or whatever it is. I'm not talking to you now, Salvatore, but to all of us.
Sure.
Then in this moment, you can fall awake 100%. Then get out of bed. But if it takes you an extra 10 minutes or 20 minutes, or you're so depressed that you're just going to lie in bed all day, well, every once in a while, touch base with that willingness to hug your depression as if you were its grandfather. And you just feel kindly towards your own depression. And then, another very important piece of this is, as was somebody in one of the last questions really alluded to it, we need each other. Mindfulness is not a kind of isolated practice that you do in a cave someplace, or just even in your own bed or on your own zafu. The real meditation practice is living your life as if it really mattered, moment by moment by moment. And that means completely interconnected, recognizing profound interconnectedness, which happens by itself as you meditate, because you wouldn't have the next in-breath if it weren't for the planet, if it weren't for the atmosphere. You wouldn't have life if it weren't for your parents. So we're not isolated beings. We're completely interconnected. And so if you have people who love you in your life, you might experiment with letting them hold you a little bit more appreciatively on your part, that you just kind of surrender to the fact that they want you to be happy. And that maybe your true nature is actually happiness. And even the darkest clouds of depression are just clouds. They're just weather patterns. And no matter how severe and dark they are, your true nature is the sky and not the clouds. And, you know, even a tiny bit of intentionality around that score can bring new life into your practice. If you've been practicing for a very long time or even a short time, and bring new life into your practice and allow every moment, just like every breath, to really be a new beginning. So you don't have to self-identify as a depressed person. Sure. And just see what happens. And the next time we have one of these in Italy with Franco, I'm going to give you some homework. I want you to, if you care to, engage in what I just suggested, and then report back to us all next year, okay?
I will. We'll be happy about that.
And do you want to respond in any way? I want to give you a moment, if you care to.
Oh, actually, I totally agree, and I agree with the heart, not agree mentally with what you say, and exactly is that what you said is just clouds passing under the sky. I mean, it's.
I wouldn't say just, though, because sometimes those clouds are really horrible. I mean, horrible things happen to us as human beings. Mm-hmm. It's not like, oh, it's just like, it's not, I mean, horrible things happen to us as human beings. And there's also a beauty and the enormity of the human heart that it actually grows more into itself and wiser and more loving, even in the face of so much of that horror and the stress and the pain and everything else. So we do need each other desperately, but I thank you for your response here, Salvatore, and I'll look forward to talking again in a year or two, okay? Sure. Meanwhile,
thank you very much.
Yeah, all best wishes and keep up the one great work.
Thank you. So, John, I think we have the time to take one more and
let's
then turn to the last reflection.
Yeah, I think that's probably wise.
Yeah, thank you. So,
and apologies to everybody else who put their hands up, but I'm just sorry that we're going to run out of time. And it's much later for you than it is for me. So I want to respect your need to, at some point or other, go to sleep.
So keep the question, then we hope John will come back here or in another place and we can bring the question.
Or better still, let me say this for a moment. Better still, if you're capable of formulating a question, then you're capable of formulating the answer to that question, or maybe even 100 different answers to that question. So you actually don't need me to answer your questions. All you need to do is hold them in awareness and not try to answer them at all, but hold the questioning, and very interesting and illuminating and liberative things happen when you take that course in relationship to your own doubts, in relationship to your own uncertainty, in relationship to what you don't think you understand. Just listen a little bit more deeply, because your awareness understands in ways that you will never understand, as long as you think there's a you there and that it's your awareness. Okay. Adriana.
Agnese, there is Agnese on the list.
Oh, I'm sorry, Agnese. Sorry. Sorry, apologies.
Adriana. Okay.
Buonasera. Thank you so much for your inspiring talk, and I really feel honored to ask my question. As you said, we desperately need each other, and So great joy comes from our interaction with others, but also great distress. And speaking about stress, seems relevant and crucial to actually practice a train about how to change our habits in our everyday life. So it's very clear to me how people get to understand, to bring awareness into their body, while apart from the inquiry, is not so clear how to improve their ability to bring wise speech and deep listening into their everyday and emotionally very difficult way of speaking.
Can I ask you, are you talking about for regular people taking Mbsr, or are you talking about the Mbsr instruction?
No, I'm just talking about Mbsr, the basic.
So the people in the class.
People in the class, exactly. As a participant, I'm learning how to teach Mbsr. So, and I'm familiar with Marshall Rosenberg's nonviolent communication. And so I'm wondering how to bring a real practical training of wise speech into the Mbsr and how to relate those.
You don't have to bring it into Mbsr.
No,
it's already there.
Yeah, I'm not.
And it's also in you. If you're going to be an Mbsr teacher, the first, I guess, step with wise speech would be right perception. So
Okay.
right listening, deep listening, and not just listening to what's coming out of somebody's mouth, their body language. Their body language will often tell you how much they're suffering. And whatever the question is that they're asking, that may not be the real question even. Because often we don't know how to put into words what we really want to know. So your response has to be authentic on maybe 20 different levels simultaneously. There's no way to teach that. That's why I started out saying that this all comes out of practice, and that you already have everything that you need to respond appropriately rather than to react mindlessly in those kinds of situations, or really any life situations. But in the end, that's a very profound question. And I would say if you're new to teaching mindfulness and Mbsr, that the people in your class are going to wind up teaching you everything you need to know. And you need to stay open to that possibility and not worry about how authentic you're going to be, but just trust that your heart will respond in the moment in a way that will be appropriate. And if it's not, you'll wake up to that sometime in the next 24 hours. And then as soon as you can, you rectify that, you apologize, or you do whatever's necessary in the next class to mend that transgression, so to speak. But it's an art form to teach even one Mbsr class, never mind 8, and an all-day session. So what you're pointing to, Agnes, is something incredibly important. And when you bring up the whole question of dialogue or inquiry, that's the thing that confuses people the most, is now I have to understand inquiry, but I don't know. You throw out the idea of inquiry. Just throw that out and be real in your conversations. I'm not doing anything now. I'm not doing inquiry with you. We're having a dialogue. We're having a conversation. I'm bringing everything that I can that might be appropriate to what you brought up, and we go back and forth about it. We can't do it at length now because we're ending the time together, but don't make inquiry into a big deal. It comes out of, in my bringing it into MBSR. I never used the word inquiry. I only used the word dialogue. And it really has to do with Zen dialogue in the Zen tradition where, it's like crazy wisdom. It's crazy speech. You really listen and then you respond, but not necessarily with what people want to hear. And sometimes it can really wake them up. But ultimately, it has to do with being true to yourself. So as an MBSR teacher, the inquiry piece or the dialogue piece, that will be the last thing to really develop in its fullness. And if it takes 10 or 20 years, don't worry about it. You'll be okay. And your teacher and the people in your classes will teach you everything you need to know about how to be in that social space where we're all together and caring for each other in ways that have integrity and that are embodied loving kindness and compassion. Embodied. You don't have to synthesize it or fabricate it. It's part of the practice. Mm-hmm. I hope that's useful to you. It's
yes, thank you.
But
so it's more about being more than doing. I understand.
As usual, yes.
And yes.
But good luck to you with it. Yeah. What were you going to say?
Yes. Okay. Thank you. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. And thank all of you who both asked questions and did not get a chance to ask questions. As I said, really the answers to our questions to a first approximation are lying in our own minds and hearts right next to where the question arises. So that can be a deep part of our own meditation practice. Plus, as I get older again, I'm becoming more and more an advocate of studying certain kinds of ancient texts, which is where mindfulness actually, has its most elaborate articulation. And, and I would say, if nothing else, the Heart Sutra, that Prajnaparamita Hridaya Sutra, and the Satipatthana Sutra, and the Anapanasati Sutra, these are really places that any MBSR teacher could do very well to actually study and read, say, Bhikkhu Analayo's books on the Satipatthana Sutra, the great sutra on mindfulness, or the sutra on awareness of breathing, mindfulness of breathing, or in the Chan tradition, just anything that points to not so much no mind, as was brought up an hour or two ago, but just the heart of the Heart Sutra, and see what's there for you. And now I'm going to turn it back over to Franco. We have another 6 or 7 minutes, unless we run over, but it's late for you guys. But if you want to tie any threads together or ask any other questions that we can cover in 1 minute or 2 minutes, whatever you want to do, Franco, is fine with me.
Yes, in some way you cover all the topics. And yes, one of the last questions, we have some more, but we have time to go deeper. It was like, you reply right now, you answer right now, sorry, about like as a Mbsr teacher and practitioner, how we can embody this inner lifelong curriculum program in ourselves. But you give some information right now. And, but there is some short, could be short, is about that about the non-knowing in the mindfulness that is very close to our culture, because Socrates says, I know that I don't know.
Right.
And I feel that you embody this when you present this, the beginner's mind, that is nothing of naive. It's something very crucial in our life, in every moment of our life. It's so, it's a kind of, let's say, like kind of freedom when we are in this beginner mind. Just a few words about the beginner mind.
Well, if we bring awareness to awareness, One of the things we'll notice right away is that we have thoughts about just about everything, especially if we're very highly educated. And not only thoughts, but opinions. And not only opinions, but very strong opinions and very strong attachments. And probably most of us live with people who have told us many, many times that we're not right about our opinions, that our opinions are not right. But we don't usually believe even them. We just are attached to our opinions. 5 years later, probably all your opinions are different. But so now you're not attached to those, but you're attached to new opinions, and all opinions are blinding because they're like lenses through which we're seeing, and we're only seeing the color of the lens. So let's take a moment and drop into awareness, and let's just do this as a guided meditation. You don't even have to sit up straight. And then bring awareness to the body sitting here, breathing as we did before. And then let it expand so that we're just resting in awareness without having to focus on any object of attention. So a kind of objectless attending. We're just the sky itself, the boundless spaciousness of the sky. And whatever arises within the sky are just the clouds and the day and night and the weather patterns and the sun and the moon and all of that. But we're just pure sky. No center, no periphery. And so when something arises in the mind like a thought, you know that it's a thought. How do you know? That's what awareness, that's the mystery of awareness, is that you're aware of it as a thought. And the content of it and the emotional charge of it, they're all like properties of the thought. But none of it's true. It's just an event in the field of awareness. And so you see, there is this element to awareness that knows when it's light, knows when it's dark, knows when it's happy, knows when there's happiness, knows when there's sadness, knows when there's, sort of suffering, knows when there's no suffering, knows when there's pain, knows when there's no pain. That awareness is a form of knowing. But then there's also, awareness also has another characteristic or dimension, and that is that when it comes to reality, we know almost nothing. No matter how much we know, there's so much we don't know. I don't know what you're thinking in this moment. I could think I know what you're thinking, and this happens all the time in families, or feeling, but I don't actually know. And it's very arrogant to think that you know what someone else is thinking. But to know that you don't know, that's liberation right here and now. That's really powerful, because then you can listen to the other person instead of only hearing what you want to hear. You can listen to the actuality of what's coming from them. And this is applicable to anything. Most scientists, for instance, you have to know a lot to be a scientist. But you also have to be careful, because you can be imprisoned by what you know and the constructs you build, the basic constructions you build about reality. Then probably just models. They're not true. They're not 100% true. And for a scientist, you have to know a lot, but you also have to know what you don't know. And then you have to learn how to inhabit that not knowing. And that's where creativity and imagination arise. And actually humility as well, because otherwise we walk around thinking we know everything. And that, really, and that's a form of blindness. It's a form of blindness. It's a form of ignorance. And the knowing and the not knowing and the knowing of not knowing qualities of awareness, it's completely impersonal. It doesn't have to do with Jon Kabat-Zinn or, Franco Cucchio or anybody else. It's beyond name and form. And if you study the Heart Sutra, you will see that it talks about it in that way. And so when we really learn how to inhabit the full dimensionality of awareness, we can be the knowing that awareness is, and also be the knowing of not knowing that awareness also is at the very same moment. And that gives us, as I was suggesting, a whole new way of being in wise relationship with the unwanted, the stressful, the painful, the confusing, the difficult, the ignorant, the dissipative, as well as the beauty in life that's everywhere, as well as all the beauty in life that we don't even recognize because we're so self-centered that we don't recognize the beauty of nature or the beauty of other people or the beauty of the moment. And when we actually penetrate the nature of self and realize that it's, as the Buddhists would say, empty of any essential nature, then all of a sudden you're free to not be, anything but who you really are, and that's a love affair. That the practice itself, taking your seat on the cushion, is a radical act of sanity, and it's also a radical act of love. And no one can do this for you. And no one can have your experience for you. And if you're not careful, you may not have it either. You may be caught up in your ideas and opinions and lose the knowing and the not knowing vibrancy of this moment when you're living in awareness. So let's take a few moments and rest in what I'm pointing to in silence. And keep in mind that this awareness is 24/7. It goes with you everywhere. The real practice of mindfulness is life itself. That's the full curriculum. So everything that happens is part of the curriculum, whether you like it or not, whether you want it or not. And the real challenge is how am I, how are you going to be in wise relationship with the full dimensionality of a human life while you have it to live in the only moment any of us have it to live, and that's this one. And if you take this as your practice, moment by moment, day by day, month by month, year by year, and you happen to be hoping to be or are a mindfulness teacher of any kind, then this is a kind of doorway into the enormous potential of this practice for healing, not just at an individual level, but for healing our world and for embracing and loving each other, no matter what we look like, no matter where we live on this planet, no matter how different we appear to be to each other, or no matter how much aversion we have to dislike we have to people who don't look, sound, or act like us. And that's where the rubber meets the road, and we begin to stretch into what it means to transcend the personal pronouns and the small self-centered sense of I, me, and mine, and become a fully embodied, authentic human being. And so this silence goes on forever, even though we won't, because one, we're mortal, and two, because we've come to the end of 3 full hours on Zoom. And at this point, Franco, if you don't mind, I'd like to once again invite the translators to come on board and let us really all together applaud you. And there'll be thousands more applauding you on the live stream. but please, where are you?
It's not easy to find. Let me check in gallery if I can see. Where are you?
Think it there's Genevieve. And
so,
where is?
Because something is, this is totally more. I can't see you. Just wave the hand so I can see you. His name Genevieve. Oh, I'm moving page to page, but I'm sorry, can't see you. Maybe raise the hand. So if you raise the hand,
no, she can show herself. She can just do it herself.
Ah, they can do it. Okay, Genevieve, now I see you. And Isabella.
Isabella, where are you? Dove sei?
So, okay, so stay there.
Oh, there you are. There
okay.
you are. Okay, let's actually feature you on the screen. Okay.
I try to do Isabella.
Spotlight. Ah, there we go. Okay, wonderful. Isabella, grazie, grazie, grazie. It's so wonderful to have you in the booth. We have to unmute you.
Okay.
Can we unmute you, Isa? Ah, there. This is for both you and Genevieve. I mean, we can't thank you enough because you're doing hard work. Our work is like easy.
Okay.
Missing you again. Oh, sorry.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a complicated life.
Yeah, that's still translating.
Okay.
So thank you.
Anyway, thank you to everybody. And
yeah.
I'll leave the last to you, Franco, but I just want to thank you for the invitation to be part of your Sangha in Italy and part of your extended universe of practitioners, students, and teachers. I want to bow to you for the work that you're doing at Motus Mundi and how wonderful it will be once we really have COVID behind us for us to actually show up in Padua in person, not just on Zoom, and be able to hug each other and meet each other and catch up on how things have been going during this time of, terrible pandemic and so much death and horror. And at the same time, so many profound opportunities to connect in new ways that we would never have had otherwise. So, grazie mille.
Thank you. Thank you, John. Me too. I hope to see you in flesh in Padua. This year, Padua becomes Urb Picta. It's recognized by UNESCO like a really treasure of painting. So you speak about art, the art of ancient painting. And just one thing, I'm not teaching really. I try to share my life, what I learned with mindfulness, what I learned from you and from the teachers who inspired me, and really teaching what mindfulness helped me and helps me a lot. So thank you to Isabella for translating into Italian, Genevieve, not only translator, but the founder of ADM, the Organization of Mindfulness in France, that generously offer also to be translator here, but she's a great teacher. And to the great people that are here. All of you are great people. Many of you are great teachers, but we are great people. And we are the society. We are a member of our life, our society, our world. And John, thank you so much. I have a lot of gratitude and love for you. Simply, simply this.
Yeah, and let me just say to close out, why don't we just all go on gallery view and just wave to each other, and we'll unmute yourself, or we'll unmute you, and we could just say arrivederci.